Hello, folks, and welcome to episode 105 of the Hunger for the Hustle podcast. Today, I have not one but two very special guests. Me and Geeg and Ahab have been back and forth on this for a while. Sometimes the universe likes to get in the way, but we've been persistent, haven't we, Geeg, and made sure it happened. We've had power cuts, technical problems, all manner of stuff.
Yeah, we both were deciding whether we should give up on this or not. Something was getting in our way, but we figured it out.
Yeah, well, I'm glad we didn't give up because I think this is going to be a great episode. There's some great stories to be told here with that 3 foot high, 40-pound, bright yellow wooden fisherman / wannabe pirate next to you called Captain Ahab. I'll give you guys a little bit of background on Geeg and the wooden guy next to him. Geeg is the caretaker and keeper of chronicles and the voice of Ahab's adventures. An average year for these guys involves jumping out of planes, whitewater rafting, exploring countless national parks and heritage sites, and taking the tours through various different countries in historic buildings, getting lost in waterfalls and in peninsulas, hitchhiking throughout Patagonia, the Virgin Islands, being part of state fairs, the Iowa State Fair to be precise, and the butter cow exhibit at the Iowa State Fair, which sounds like a lot of fun all by itself. It's just an amazing story. And Captain Ahab, I know, has been in your family, Geeg, for 7 decades. Together, you guys are on a mission to conquer your bucket list together and show to people that if you can conquer your bucket list with a 40-pound wooden character with you, pirate, sorry, not character, then anyone else can do it too. And I think that's, why I was so happy to have you on the show today, because I like to inspire and motivate people as much as I can on this show. And it seems like you're aligned with that similar thing. So let's pull back though, Geeg. How did Ahab come to be in your family? He's been in there for over 70 years.
Yeah, so it was actually World War II was the reason that he's in my family. So my grandfather was drafted into the Navy, and when he did that, he met a few guys at the, when it was all starting before they got sent off to the South Pacific, and the officers would take out all the guys in the service like the night before they left port type of thing. Everybody was nervous about leaving the next day. Some people might not come home, things like that. And while they were in the pub the night before they left port, they were hearing all these old stories, whether they were war stories or adventure stories type of thing, but they all revolved around the servicemen going into that port town and commandeering an item from the town. And the idea was to make it like a stowaway on the ship, and you'd write a little scrapbook to the parents the whole time. And when you got hopefully back safely, you'd bring that scrapbook and the lawn ornament or sign or whatever it was back to the house, knock on the door, hide in the bushes, and you'd leave the lawn ornament and the scrapbook of his travels there. And you would see when they opened it, the once sad parents would become very happy because they would have a story about where the character had went. But for my grandfather and his, soon to be war comrades there, they did all this, but when they got back to port, they were so inebriated that night before they left that some of the details from that night didn't stay with them a year and a half later. So they got on the dock of that, off the boat, they're at the dock, all excited to bring them back and all this, that, and the other thing. And one by one, they go around the circle and realize nobody had taken the task of writing down the address or remembering it. They all thought the next guy would. So instead of sort of giving up on this prank that they started, they decided to take him home. And a few years later, they all bought a farmhouse together in the Catskills of New York. And every year they decided to go back to this farmhouse and have a reunion. And as they got older, they started to have families. They had kids, their kids had kids. And then there was 34 of us that were at this big celebration every year, plus all of their old war buddies and other families and things. And it just turned into this big celebration. And it actually revolved around the statue. But as kids, none of us really knew it was that. We just thought it was a big family reunion. We didn't realize some of these guys weren't related by blood, but they made a family through the service. And then, so yeah, and that's at 10 years old, I found a late night card game going on between these men that were all in the service together. And I found out that they never won like the jackpot in the middle, but whoever won the game won the destination for Ahab. So every year they would add one more destination to that scrapbook that they had. So they kept the prank just going and going, figuring maybe someday somebody would find them or find its way back to them through all these travels. But what changed was on my 19th birthday, after that card game had all been done, usually they would disappear, by the next morning. But I went out to the barn where they held it the next morning, and my grandfather and all the buddies there, the war buddies who were my uncles at that point, they handed me an envelope full of the winnings from the card game and told me it was my time to carry on this tradition with Ahab and to wake up my friends, put Ahab in the car and start driving. So that was 19 years ago. In a few months, it'll be exactly 19 years I've been doing this. We haven't looked back since.
What a story. What a story. I never knew, because you see this happening, where people take something like an ornament or a cuddly toy or something on their travel with them, and they keep a diary. But I never knew that that's the actual history of where that story comes from, of servicemen taking stuff from towns. Those towns must have not had a lot left in them if they kept doing that all the time, I was thinking.
Yeah. I always joke, now that we're, out and about speaking and things, everywhere we go and tell the story, I always joke that I'm going to get a paper or somebody's going to mail me one, and it'll say like lawn gnome theft up 30% since, Captain Ahab came to town type of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Or that someone just goes, hey, I mean, it's been 70 years now, so it's a long time.
Yeah.
Someone goes, hey, wasn't that in our front garden?
Right.
Someone figures it out.
Yeah. I always joke that I really hope one day there is like the other side of this coin, where there's grandchildren or great grandchildren that are like, we've been hearing stories about, my grandfather or grandmother carved this thing and it was in their family for and just the other side that's been hunting for it. I don't think it'll happen, but if we make the story big enough, somebody will come forward someday and try to claim it one way or another. Yeah.
Because I mean, it's a beautiful hand carved piece. Someone's taken a lot of their time to do that, and the detail on it, I can see, and over the camera, I can see there's like real detail in all the beard and stuff like that.
Yeah,
he's a very serious looking guy.
Yeah,
40 pounds as well. I wouldn't want to mess with him.
Yeah. It depends the angle you look at him, but yeah, he's got a serious face on him.
He sure has. Like most fishermen of age, I suppose. It's a pretty rough life.
Mm-hmm.
Where was the first place you took him when you got in the car with your buddies at 19?
So we went down to Florida. One of the uncles in the family, as they got older, they were in their 70s when they passed them on to me. So one of them didn't make it up from Florida that year where he lived. So we took a road trip with Ahab down to see him, just so he would get his picture with him type of thing, or what they did with him every year.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fantastic. It's such a great story, and so great that you kept it going. I think it's important to keep family traditions going and carry them forward. And I mean, have you got kids yourself now?
I don't. I have a lot of nieces and nephews type of thing, and I think that's the way. Who knows what's in the cards for me, but it's more. This family was built out of strangers, so I don't plan to pass it on to somebody that's directly blood related to me. It's just got to be somebody in our family type of thing, and the people I've met over the years and the people that sit around that card table with me now, when, it's not, we don't get together once a year. We have different people from different walks of life and different areas, and everybody sort of comes and goes out of Ahab's life in their own time. So, in the winter, sometimes we get one group of our friends that come around, and some people come on road trips with us. Other people come to speaking engagements, but it's not just a once a year celebration anymore. It's whenever you can find an excuse to get something crossed off your bucket list or a goal, we encourage it, and we try to come with everybody, or they try to come with us every time.
I like that. It's a great initiative and a great way of inspiring other people. One thing I've got to ask, because I was wondering when I was reading up about you and Ahab, is when you jumped out of the plane, did he actually jump out of the plane? Was he actually strapped to someone?
Yeah. So we did a tandem. Yeah. We were very worried that he was going to, we were debating who he should jump with type of thing it was in Jumptown in Orange, Massachusetts. We've been with them 2 different times now. One, we did a group activity with them, which they were super hospitable about, and the other time was just solo with me and Ahab. But when we got there, they were debating, how to strap them in, and when the chute pulled, if it would knock out the person that was, on his back essentially, and all this stuff. So we had a full body sort of suit and a helmet and everything, just to like make sure that it was safer than it for goofing off like we were. It was still safe, but yeah.
Yeah, because I've done a skydive, and you certainly get thrown around, and I can't imagine being strapped to this fella. So, I mean, you could say he's been on, he's lived such a colourful life. He's well over 80 years old. I mean, that's the thing. Who knows how old he was when he was accosted from someone's front lawn as well?
Right. He could have been there generations with families. There's been lawn ornaments around since the late 1800s, I think, at least detailed carved ones. And then there's other things. So, random facts that I know that since I'm involved with lawn gnomes, but it's crazy how, not only how old this is, but it's just that I just get surprised every time that people are still interested in helping progress this ongoing story and being a part of it. It's just, I'm motivated every time somebody is motivated by us. So it's just, we recharge each other in that sense, and it's easy to keep this going.
Well, it's a legacy, isn't it, really, that's been created. And I think people are excited to be part of something, and part of something different, for sure. So, and this is something that's very different. One thing I wanted to discuss was, finding a life's purpose. Of course, I'm sure, you have a lot of adventures with Ahab, but it's not your, maybe it is your whole entire life purpose, but I think, you've got a main job as well, if not a couple of jobs. It's escaped me what you do, sorry, but
no, it's
but how do you, this has become part of your life's purpose in a way, but what would you, if you're, there's some guys watching this, listening to this at a later date, how would you advise them as to leading into finding their life's purpose?
Yeah. So growing up, I mentioned my grandfather was drafted into the Navy. Well, he was drafted, but he chose the Navy because he always wanted to be a pirate. And I know that sounds silly, but he found a way to sort of do what he wanted, even though he missed it by a good 300 years to be a true, pirate that we all dream about. And that's how I sort of grew up, being brainwashed that you could get into piracy in that old-fashioned sense. And so I went to school for marine biology. I would work as a whitewater raft guide or a summer camp counselor where I taught sailing, all jobs where they could be pirate themed, or, you could dress like a pirate on the river, things like that. Yeah. So I sort of found ways to go after my passion while I was also getting paid for it. And I think there's aspects of a lot of jobs where if you want to be something, you might not be able to directly do it right away, but there's other ways to sort of balance that equation out. And so it's funny because you were saying, outside, I always say my professional life is all the things I do with Ahab. And then outside my professional life, I'm a biology lab tech and a whitewater raft guide. I sort of flip it now, but yeah, it started out as just this life hobby, right? It was something passed to me, and it was something you're supposed to do in your free time when you can. And it taught me how to use that 10 minutes every night that I had of free time towards something until it added up to 10 hours that really made it something. Mm-hmm. And then as I devoted more and more time to this, now it's sort of flipped where, yes, I still, work other jobs, but right before COVID, we were speaking full time at universities and businesses about, how we get so much done and how to motivate yourself to get what you're passionate about done, or your projects and goals done. So coming out of COVID, we'll see which way is more, but regardless, this being a life hobby, it doesn't, the currency that we make off of it isn't always like a monetary gain, but it's so much more valuable to us that, the monetary pieces are always a bonus, and they fund more adventures and more things for the crew, but it'll always be a passionate life hobby at the very least. And that's how it's always been. So we always get stuff done because we've incorporated a chunk of our life to always being a part of this.
Yeah, it's perpetual, isn't it? It's almost grown its own legs, you could say, and those legs are taking you around the world.
Yeah, but even if you don't, like everybody says, like, oh, my grandparents didn't leave me a to-do list or a task list or a motivation like Ahab, but you can start one today for generations to come. You can take an object in your house that some relative left you or a friend or something that's just sitting there on the shelf and turn it into that adventure catalyst for yourself. Like, you have to take this spoon out of your drawer and bring it all over the world. And making the excuse for the spoon is making the excuse for yourself. And that's all Ahab really is. He's an excuse for me to get rid of all my friends' excuses that when they come up. Like a good example of that is that card game I talked about. Every year, they'd all put where they wanted to go in an envelope. And one of the uncles, my grandfather's naval buddies there, he'd always write world's largest ball of twine. And it was 25 hours away in the middle of nowhere, Kansas. And so I think they always cheated, so he never would win the game because they never wanted to drive there. But when I told that story to my, the first sort of the group of crew, Ahab's first crew, they didn't come up with a single excuse not to do it. They were like, yeah, that's not too far of a drive, or that'll take too long, or we don't have the money, or my girlfriend or boyfriend will probably break up with me type of thing. It was, yes, we have to get Ahab there. But really, they were all making excuses for themselves to go and using Ahab as the excuse. And it's worked for me like that for 20 years. It's got me to do more things outside of my comfort zone and I have a pretty big comfort zone in terms of trying new things, but Ahab has made that bubble almost endless.
It's fantastic. I almost expect him. He's got so many stories and so much energy with him in him. I almost expect him to just start speaking in a minute and start telling his own stories. I believe it's a strange thing to say, but I think objects and things can hold energy, and he would always have a good spirit and energy around him, just from all the fun and laughter and joy he's brought to all different parts of the world. Is there anywhere that you've taken him where you've had like a bit of pushback? You mentioned there was a bit of hospitality. That's not a word. Hostility there with when you first took him parachuting. Is there any other places that have been like, hey, who's this guy? What's going on here?
Yeah, and even with the skydiving, they've just never seen it before. That's one of the worst excuses, right? Like, oh, we've never done it that way.
Yeah.
But at least they were open to creative options and we made it work. There's two places that said no to us in the last 2 decades. The first one was Mammoth Cave National Park. They just said he might bump into a wall and ruin some of the things in the cave, the different organisms and things going on in there.
Yeah.
And it sort of made sense. But then, as they told us this, there's 40, 12-year-old school children wiping their hands on the walls and, like it was a silly excuse they made at the time. And I just accepted it because I didn't have enough experience with Ahab yet to fix it. But that one, we just went, what was it, 3 years ago? We called him up. Ahab's much more popular now. And we told them what we do and all the stuff. And not only did they let us come back and do a tour, but they didn't tell us about it, but they had us speak 500 feet underground to a group of 50 people just with one wicker lamp, like one lamp. And that was all that lit the cavern up. And it was an amazing experience. It's an odd feeling being that deep underground. Like, that there's things on top of you and you're sort of surrounded, but it's just a different world. So it was well worth the rejection at first and the effort we put into reversing that rejection. And the one we haven't fixed yet was the Statue of Liberty. She doesn't return Ahab's calls or anything like that. So we're going to get those two together at some point. But when we showed up there without a plan, really, they were just like, no, you can't bring that in type of thing. And usually we don't have to call or anything. We don't try to plan it. We just sort of try to let what's going to happen. But like I said, that's really the only place out of the hundreds and hundreds of things that we've done, different adventures. Statue of Liberty is the only one we haven't figured out how to complete yet.
Yeah. Oh, I can see that you like a challenge, evidently, and so does Ahab. So there's no doubt that you'll get it done. It's just a matter of time. Just a matter of time. Yeah, exactly. I know what you're saying about the caves. I have a thing about caves. I love going. I've been in lots of different ones all around the world, and there's always something very kind of like fascinating, mysterious about it. And I bet that was a really nice place to do some speaking, particularly when it was just lit in that way, almost kind of like a spooky, almost pirate-ish type feel to it.
Yeah, it was sort of, like a place they would like hide, treasure chests and things like that. It just seemed like one of those things. It's not right off the beach, but it would seem like one of those places you would just drag a bunch of treasure down and hide it in there, and it would just disappear.
Yeah,
but yeah,
very far. Now, the spirit of wanderlust is something I wanted to talk about. I think that wanderlust, and I really think, I mean, excluding the last 2 years, and even so inside that, some people are still managing to travel. It just depends what kind of flights you can afford, I think. But the travel, I believe, is the kind of new luxury of young people today. It used to be that you used to kind of leave school, perhaps go college, university, and then you'd get married, have children, settle down, get a house, dream complete. Now I think what you see a lot of the trend of people doing is going to school. Sometimes people go straight from school. They might go to college or university, but after that, they tend to like to go traveling, and they travel as much as they can, as far as their money will carry them. And sometimes they just stay there, find their favorite place to stay, and don't come back. I think the world's really changed a lot in that respect. Would you agree?
Yeah, I completely agree, because what you just described, my grandfather joined the service, got married when he got home, had a bunch of kids, and they just like had that family vacation in the summer every year, that house they went to, but they were just on the cycle that was just, this is, your life is complete, and they were happy and everything. There's nothing wrong with it. Right. But now, I can't even imagine, like after I got out of university, the first thing we did was start traveling. And I've noticed slowly, people start having families or get serious with their careers and things. And they slowly, everybody's evolving away from traveling with me as much as I would like them to. Yeah. But every once in a while, if somebody comes back into the fold and says, I need to get out with Ahab again. We haven't seen you since college, or things like that. But
they succumb to the kind of normal life, as you could say, as you can put it. And there's nothing wrong with that at all.
No, not at all.
No, everyone takes their own path. But it's nice that they come back into the fold and go, hey, look, I need some Ahab adventures again.
Yeah. And even so, like I just a buddy of mine, we did research in college, and we played soccer together and things. But the other day he just got a hold of me, and we ended up just playing a game online just to catch up. And we were on a voice chat thing, but it was just nice to talk. We talked for over an hour playing a game, but we weren't really there to play the game. We were just there to sort of catch up. And it's just, that's one nice thing about COVID. It's sort of made people reach out more than I think they normally would, because you're realizing how disconnected we've been for so long. Yeah,
I agree for sure. And, there are some good things that come out of COVID that we kind of discussed off camera, but that is one good thing. People I find do reach out more, and it's not, of course, it's not the same. Nothing's the same as catching up with someone face to face. I know that better than anyone. This is the longest time I live over here in Australia. All my family's in the UK, and this is the longest time I've not seen them for because of COVID. So it's tough, and a lot of people are in that situation all around the world in different places. But you do find that people connect more and are reaching out more. And we're doing that in different ways, I mean, just like this podcast right now, this podcast actually wouldn't even exist if it wasn't for COVID. And I know you were saying to me off camera before, it's been interesting for you how you were doing a lot of speaking, and now there's not live stages going on so much. Well, there's not really. Right. So it's kind of diversified into podcasts and doing other things.
Yeah. And that's the crazy thing. Like I've spoken in front of, 1,000 people or so, and that seems less nerve-wracking than just me I'm in this room, Ahab and I are just here by ourselves, but just, there's just so much on the other side of the camera, not just with you, but you don't know who's really there anymore. But when you can see somebody, even if it's just shadows of people in the crowd, it's a much different feeling than it is just, I'm Italian, so I talk with my hands still, that sort of a joke type of thing. But when I'm sitting down, I can't I can't do anything, but I'm trying to hold my hands together type of thing. But it's so much different, that one thing, just between sitting and standing, you know, between live and recorded. It's, there are some differences that are definitely noticeable.
Yeah. And how has Ahab inspired your spirit for wanderlust? I mean, was it like you finished college and you went on all your travels with him, or had you done a bit of traveling before and got that hunger for it?
So when I was 16, before this was well before I got Ahab, was my first trip out of the country. I went down to the Amazon through Peru.
Oh, wow.
And went there with one of my high school professors. And we had this thing where we used to joke, like, every meal we were like, this is the best piece of bread we ever had, or this was the best, you know, cold shower in the morning, even because there was no hot water and things.
Yeah.
But I think the mentality of how I experienced travel outside of my town early on, with those few experiences, and then when I saw what my grandfather was doing with his friends and what I had to do in the future, I think it just set up these, not expectations, but it set up these guidelines for me. Like I practiced early on how to travel, in terms of when I go somewhere, it's not just do it as fast as you can. It's appreciate what's around and see new things and do new things. And, you know, I was fortunate enough, this was in 2002. So the cell phone that I did have at some point it literally was a brick. So it wasn't something you were just staring at or whatever. It was text messages. Each letter took, three types of each number type of thing to get to the right letter. So I was fortunate not to have as many distractions like that. But I think, the travel early on and having to make excuses to bring Ahab, with not making excuses to, but making excuses to actually do these things because of Ahab, really just set this mindset for me that I never had bad habits in terms of travel after that.
No, well, to go to somewhere like the Amazon at 16, that's an amazing opportunity. You know, some people live their whole life and dream of going there. So I think, that's certainly sparked it within you. But you also touched on something else there. It made me think of the first time I went traveling and asking you the question. And that was the first place I ever went that was pretty far from home, like a long haul flight, was Thailand, to a small play. I went to Krabi, a small a place called Tonsai Bay, which is just near Krabi, not far from Phi Phi Islands in Thailand. And that was, I remember I had a phone at the time, and it was similar to what you were describing. It was like, it was text messages and calls, and they were that expensive to make internationally. You didn't find it was like, speak to mom once a week, make sure you check in. And
right. It was emergencies. Yeah,
that was essentially right. It was emergencies, and there was cold showers, and it was just like huts on the beach. You only had power at night in this place. There was no power in the day. And I went back there 10 years later, and it was a whole different story. And I was like, man, this place has changed. Some for the better, some for the worse. You had power at night, which was nice because you had AC. But it was amazing how much the world changed so fast, and it changed travel really as well. In that kind of, let's say, kind of mid 2000s to late end of, just completely changed. And the advent of like smartphones really changed it a lot, I think. Like you said, distractions and almost the shareability of everything made those lesser visited places, those more places that weren't so well discovered, became a lot more open to everyone, because you're like, I saw it on Instagram, so I'm going to go there,
Right.
It just changed so much. Sometimes for the better, sometimes for not so much for the better. But
right. Yeah, I tell people that a lot when we travel places. Like we went places, 10 years ago. Even if we went back, they're not the same place no matter what. Even if that trail or things like that, it's everywhere is different. Like your experience is completely unique to your time. And it's always interesting. We try not to revisit places, just there's so many places in the world. I definitely want to get him as many places as possible. And maybe we'll have our favorites that we'll start revisiting later on. But we're really trying to see as much as we can to figure out what we like. Everybody, if you only try one thing, that's going to be your favorite thing. Right.
Yes,
so you gotta have a diverse palette, and then you figure out what your real favorites are.
Yeah, I agree with that massively, JJ. I agree with that. And I think that dials into finding your purpose and your passion as well. You know, you just got to try lots of different things, and eventually one thing it'll feel right. It'll feel right within you, you know, and you'll know that's your purpose, your passion. It'll all tie in. But if you don't try, you're never going to know. You're just going to settle for what you've always done. And who knows what you're capable of, and what value you could give back to the world if you didn't try lots of different things.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, I mean, I know it's difficult at the moment to plan, but have you got any plans at the minute for Ahab local adventures?
So yeah, we're trying to do stuff a little more local this summer for us, just trying to keep trips within sort of 3 hours. That way, just in case COVID pivots again for the worst, we don't have too much planned or too much invested. But we were supposed to hike Everest to Everest Base Camp the last 2 Mays, and that's been canceled. So that's on the back burner. We have a few trips to Texas. We plan on visiting Houston to go see NASA. They invited us for a behind the scenes tour of some things, which was really cool. But COVID postponed that. Every day we're just hoping to get that one off the bucket list. We're excited about that one. But yeah, we're trying to keep it sort of close to home right now. That way it's very manageable things, like we said, because of COVID. But hopefully by the fall we'll be out adventuring sort of as close to full time as we can, and speaking, you know, at universities on the way type of thing. That's our big plan, but who knows? We just got to sort of roll with the punches in that sense.
That's right. Yeah. As we all have, you know, at the moment, just take it one day, 1 week at a time, and be grateful for the good that we do have, and the things that aren't going on, not the things that aren't.
Right.
He opens some doors for you, doesn't he? He really opens some doors for you. Getting a behind the scenes tour at NASA. That's not an invite that everyone's getting, for sure.
No, and that just happened. Yeah, we were just at my roommate from college, who was the first crew of Ahab, the first person he met. He got married, and it was through that wedding that we started talking about the NASA thing and everything, which was really interesting thing to come up. But yeah, it's so crazy how many doors it opens, because even with people on phones and things like that, it's still, when I carry them around, it makes people too curious. You know, they have to ask type of thing.
Oh.
And as soon as they let their guard down, they're putting their phone in their pocket, and we're talking. And as soon as we start talking, you know, I tell them what we're doing, and this is the adventure we're on, and these are all the other things. And it instantly has them talking about their passions or their goals, instead of just like the weather or, you know, the whatever's going on or what you watched on Netflix type of thing, small talk. It gets them talking about things that they actually want to get done. And then they're connected via social media to Ahab. And I remind people a lot, like, hey, 3 months ago, you told me you wanted to do this. Where are you on that? And we talk about it. And it's an ongoing discussion at that point. So it's just, like I said, even with all, you know, the distractions there are when we're traveling, so many more doors open because people look up at us in that sense, or they're curious whether they think we're going to cause trouble, or, you know, good or bad. We're doing both, basically.
Yeah. That's a really like succinct way to kind of spark a conversation, and then obviously create the following. Yeah, look, follow us on our trips and inspire people. You know, I'd love to think how many people have actually been inspired to try new things and go to new places just through that actual process of it playing out. You know,
No, it's just that we have a handful of stories like that are my favorites. But yeah, there's only so many I hear about, and hopefully we don't need to take credit for a single one of them. We're just excited when people do complete these things. But we've had people teach other people how to swim because they were all in the same group, and talking about, you know, things that they knew how to do versus that, you know, that didn't. And then they'd help each other. 2 years ago, we were walking in this little canyon in New York. It was a glen. And this mother and her 2 daughters, the mother was older and her 2 daughters were, you know, middle age or my age. And the mother had stopped, and I guess this trip had been on their docket for years, and she'd always wanted to hike this, and her daughter said they'd come with them. And we got to her about a mile in, which was, you know, a third of the way. and she was already turning around, and the daughters were going to hike up and get the car and go back and get her type of thing. And we chatted with her for a little bit and then moved on. You know, she heard the Ahab story, everything, took her pictures with her. And then all of a sudden we were, you know, I'd stop and take breaks. We're much slower than most people. And yeah. And all of a sudden we just heard her sort of yelling behind us, like, wait for me. I'm going to hike with you guys. If you're doing it with him, I got to complete this type of thing. Yeah. And it was that's our most recent one, where right before COVID this happened. And it was just, it always amazes me, because we're not trying to pressure people to take that one more step, or, you know, it's always your comfort. But we do show people that if you are making an excuse like, oh, that's, you know, too far, or cost too much, or what it is, like, my burden of this 43 extra pounds cannot be as heavy as those little day-to-day excuses. And we're just trying to wipe those off the map, so you can concentrate on bigger excuses. Like, if you don't have the finances or the time or whatever it is, how can you balance that out? How can you solve that problem for yourself? But you can't, if you can't bully or push through those little excuses you make every day, you're never gonna get the big one off your plate.
Yeah, I think that's a really good way of looking at it. Yeah, if you get caught up in the small, don't sweat the small stuff, they say, right?
Yeah.
You know, get caught up in the small things, they become bigger things, and before you know it, you're trying to fix them, and you actually haven't paid any attention to the bigger things, which are probably more important in most cases.
Yeah, and I think, just like I was talking about with that nice lady that we met, it wasn't so much that she couldn't do it; it was just she forgot why she wanted to do it, I think, and talked herself out of it for a second. But just seeing a lawn, like, it makes no sense. She met a lawn gnome, and it completely reverted her back to her goals. You know, it's just, it's silly. It doesn't have to make sense completely, but it works every time we meet somebody.
Yeah.
And it's just exciting that he brings out all of these stories from people. And I know so many more people's goals and passions because of what we talk about, because we don't end up talking about sports or weather or whatever, you know, they watched the night before type of thing. And I'm always intrigued by those conversations that revolve around goals and how people get there.
They lead to good things, definitely. And they're a much more interesting conversation than small talk, for sure. On that note, what are some of your kind of goals and aspirations for yourself and Ahab? Obviously, there's a lot of places you want to travel to, but it seems to me there's a bit more of a bigger picture than that going on here.
Yeah, so I think we've figured out the traveling really well at this point, you know, and we can do it ourselves. And now it's more about helping more people hear the story and get motivated by Ahab to do the things that you want to do. And I don't mean that in some selfish way, like everybody quit their jobs and everybody travel and things, but it's just how you manage your time and how you get the most out of your life. Whether, you know, you brought up skydiving before, and we've been whitewater rafting and things, but we've also been to comic conventions and library openings and worked a letterpress and things like that, where that might not sound exciting to some people, but a few people that are listening, their ears just perked up type of thing. Yeah. Like, everybody has different passions. They don't have to be full of adrenaline to be fun. And it's just about, managing your time and making sure you can do it. So we're trying to speak more, and through speaking, travel to these places, not by plane all the time or things like that, but, you know, make a road trip and figure out the destinations in between and map out more places for people and show them, you know, how it's possible, and give them more details about these places through the eyes of Ahab, basically.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic. I think what you've created here and what you've carried on from, you know, is your grandfather still with us, or is he passed?
So that's the thing. It was funny you were talking about the energy with Ahab, because once they passed them on to me, every one of those men passed away in the next year.
Really? Wow.
So, 2 in a car accident. One had a heart condition. Another one had a liver condition. But they were all, you know, close to 80 years old or so, type of thing. There was something, you know, our weakest link will show at some point at that age, type of thing. But I think, you know, it's when you retire, you need to have a hobby, whether you garden or travel or what it is, right? And Ahab, I think, was their sort of retirement hobby. It was their hobby their whole life. But when they stopped doing that, I think it just sort of their energy. I always think that if they kept them, they would have lived indefinitely type of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah. So now they just, I have that energy and we travel with it type of thing. And hopefully I last a little longer when I pass them on and it's not some, curse I'm putting on this statue. But
I'm sure your grandfather and all your uncles would be super proud to see what you've done with him and how far you've taken him, because I guess, did they ever take him outside the States?
So no, I don't. Besides the South Pacific where they originally brought him, that's a bigger trip than any trip I've been on still. But I think anyways. But no, I think they did a lot of trips. It was more like they would go north and go hunting with him and just stay in a cabin. Like they weren't taking pictures with him all the time, or it was just this. They told stories around a campfire or around a bottle of bourbon or around a card table. They weren't posting things or taking pictures or framing them and putting them on a wall. The barn was full of knickknacks and stolen license plates, I'm sure, wherever from different places. Just that the knickknacks you keep over the years that remind you of a sentimental moment. And that was how they kept track of Ahab. Where for me, everybody that meets him and I share the story with and they share a story with me takes a picture with Ahab, which is the only negative for COVID, because I've met so many people like you and I have just met, and there's no way we have to get together at some point and get a picture with you and Ahab, because that's just the rules we've made. So I have a laundry list of people now that I have to coordinate pictures with, but I think it just gives us an excuse to travel to more and more places.
Of course it does. Yeah. You have to get over to Australia. That'd be a big trip for him. How does he fly? Where do you put him on the plane?
So that actually, the spot on his nose right here is because I used to check him.
I was going to ask, has he been damaged?
No, I don't. Yeah, so I don't paint his face just because it's, it's like if he has a beard and I just shaved it off of him, you don't look the same, right? So I think if I repaint his face, he's just not going to look right. So I've never painted his face, and that nose damage is from going on the carousel from the bags. And he just getting rolled around and dropped and things. So we stopped checking him as a bag, and we went through security the first time and they let him through. And then when we get to the gate now, we tell the story and ask if there's a seat, and we'd love to, share it as part of the thing. It'll make everybody's time on your flight more fun and all this stuff. And almost, I would say 80% of the time now he gets his own seat if there's one available.
That is amazing.
And he flew first class before I ever did. We were going to Ireland, and we were talking like, hey, could we put him in a seat or something? And they're like, we're not sure if there's one available, but we'll put him up in like the stewardess and steward's locker area. And we were getting off the plane. We're all coming out of coach. And they're like, oh, yeah, you can come get him. And they had him all tucked in like a blanket. He had the night blinder on his eyes. He had, he was in a first class seat. And I was almost upset. I was upset for days after that, because he could have been in coach and we could have taken the seat type of thing. And it was just one of those things where even he gets more out of this than I even do. And I'm with him every day, right? It's crazy the life this lawn gnome gets to live when he's aspiring to be a pirate. Yeah.
It is crazy. I mean, but let's have it right, Jay. He deserves that first class seat. He's the star. You are just the voice.
Yeah. I will be gone eventually, and he'll have another sidekick. Yeah.
I mean, you're a lot more than that. You're the one that makes it happen, right? He wouldn't be having all these adventures if it wasn't for his caretaker.
Well, and I say,
yeah.
No, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Oh no, it's funny you say that, because I say that a lot when I'm speaking to groups about how my grandfather and my uncles, his naval buddies there, were his excuse. He would have dry rotted on a lawn by now and been, maybe thrown in a fire pit or something, because he's just got that old. And same for my grandfather and his buddies. They might not even, like, the service bonds you together with people, but I don't know if between that and Ahab is what made them get the farmhouse and get together every year type of thing. Because if they didn't do that silly prank, I might not even know half of that side of all of those people. Never mind have this task. I could just be going to work right now, not even knowing that I gave up a hobby that never came to be, type of thing. So it's
definitely, I can't think of anyone I've met who's got a more unique hobby. I really can't, and I don't think I ever will. It's just fantastic. It's amazing. It's inspiring to me. I'm sure it inspires a lot of other people, and I know that's a big part of the purpose for you. So, congratulations on it, man. I think the world needs more Ahabs. It needs more Geeg.
Cheers.
I don't think you should ever paint the face. He's a fisherman at the end of the day. He should be a weathered-looking character.
Yeah, I agree.
It kind of answers my next question. I was going to say, like, he's got a bright, shiny coat. You must have given him a few fresh coats of paint over the years.
Yeah, so the front looks cleaner than it is, but he's definitely weathered. We haven't painted him in probably since we trekked through Chile, and that was 2017. Yeah, we did 4 months just trekking down through Patagonia type of thing. And that's the last time, right before we went down there, I painted him just because I knew he'd be weathered after that trip. And it's been, almost 5 years. But
you're still looking fresh. You're still looking fresh for not having a shower, as it were, for 5 years. I'm going to drop your social links here in the comments so all the folks can find them. And they'll be in the show notes as well, guys. So if you want to connect with Geeg and Ahab and follow their adventures on Instagram, Facebook, or YouTube, they are there in the links and in the show notes. I'd love to know that. I'm trying to picture you hiking with him, and I'm like, how do you carry him? Because I've done a fair bit of hiking. A normal backpack, doesn't matter how many liters you got, you're not going to fit that guy in there.
So up until we started planning for Everest Base Camp, I would just shoulder him. Literally, this is how I carry him, just like 80s boombox style. It's just he's a huge thing on my shoulder. But for when we decided that we were going to do base camp at Everest, we got an L frame backpack, and I customed it to strap him in. It straps around him, and it only fits him and a little bit of other gear. But yeah, we have a customized backpack now for any. It's opening up even more adventures to us. Not that it has to be an extreme hike like Everest Base Camp, but it just opens mountains up to us now that we're, any type of steep elevation is almost impossible for me to carry them like I was. But so now coming out of COVID, we're starting to think about bigger places because we've now utilized a backpack that is just exponential how many more things can open up.
Great for your fitness and strength as well, I'd imagine, carrying an extra 43 pounds around.
I played a few sports, through the years type of thing at, through grade school and university, but I haven't been to the gym since type of thing. And I think I'm doing all right, but and it's all because I carry him for sure.
Yeah, it's a great added extra that you perhaps wouldn't think about on the face of it. Yeah, fantastic. Geeg, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the show. I'm excited to see the next of Ahab's adventures. Hopefully this stuff gets cleared out by the fall and you can get back out there. I know you've had your jabs. I'm sure he has too. So I reckon you'll be set and good to go. But thanks for joining me on the show. Keep doing what you're doing. I think it's amazing. I think it's fantastic.
Cheers is all on my end, Jake. I'm just glad we stuck with it and we got to have this conversation, because I'm sure it always starts, with a couple strangers talking one way or another. And now, it'll be 5 years from now and we'll still be laughing about, things we're planning or conversations we have, or, people we connect with now, or even you using Ahab as an icebreaker or something in the future type of thing.
Yeah,
it always comes around. Now that you're a part of it, it's hard not to avoid it. So
I'm proud to be a part of it, and I'll be keeping track of the adventures on Instagram. I love to travel too, so I'm sure we'll bump into each other one day, and I'll get
that's what we were saying. It might be easier just to see each other on the road for the podcast.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah. I'll trust me, as soon as I can travel, I'll be in the UK, go to see my family. So if you're over that way, we'll meet up and we'll go on an adventure. There's some great hikes actually in the UK to be done for sure.
Yeah. All right. Cheers, my friend. That sounds good.
Cheers. Take care. And thanks for listening, everyone. If you enjoyed the episode, please share it with your friends and family. Stay happy, stay healthy, stay hungry, and keep on hustling, folks.